My daughter Lena said I was slowing down and that I needed help managing my affairs. She smiled when she said it, the way people smile at stray dogs they don't plan to keep. Help to her meant locking me out of my own accounts, selling what wasn't hers, and moving me into her guest room like a child who needed minding. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. I just looked at her hands as she poured my tea, hands that used to fit inside mine, and thought, you forgot who taught you to hold a cup steady. I had Lena when I was 21, back when my husband still called me darlin', and thought the world revolved around his paycheck. When he left, the world revolved around me, and the 2 jobs I worked to keep the lights on. I mended her clothes until the fabric gave up. I skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. When she wanted ballet, I took the night shift at the nursing home, sleeping in my car between jobs. When she crashed my only car at 17, I rode the bus for months so she could get to school. I sold my mother's sapphire brooch, the only thing she left me, to pay for Lena's college books when her scholarship didn't stretch far enough. I never asked for thanks. I thought love was a cycle. I thought it would come back around when it mattered most. It started with small things. Lena offered to help pay bills online. She suggested changing my mailing address, so nothing important gets lost. She started keeping my checkbook in her desk drawer, saying it would be safer there. Then, without warning, my debit card declined at the store. Bread, milk, and eggs. Nothing else. I called the bank from the parking lot. The man on the phone told me my account had been updated for joint authorization. Joint with who? I asked. With a Ms. Lena Carver, he said. That night, Lena explained it over dinner as if she were describing the weather. Mama, this way we can keep track of things together. You won't have to worry about mistakes. I didn't argue. I just added it to the list in my head. A week later, Lena suggested I move into her guest room. She said it would be easier for them to help me if I were under the same roof. I told her I was fine in my own house. She said the stairs were dangerous at my age. 2 weeks later, without asking, she called a moving truck. I came home from the grocery store to find strangers boxing up my living room. We're just getting you settled, she said. I left my house that day without realizing I'd never sleep there again. At first, I told myself maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Lena's house was bigger, newer, cleaner. She and Mark had a shiny kitchen with more counter space than I'd ever had in my life. My guest room had fresh paint and a window that looked out at their manicured lawn. But within the first week, I noticed my quilt was gone. Not folded at the foot of the bed where I'd placed it. Gone. In storage, Lena said, breezy as if the word itself was a kindness. You know how dust is. I'll bring it out for company. I never asked her what company. I was the company. 2 days later, I went to take my pearl earrings out of the little dish I kept on the dresser. The dish was there. The earrings were not. Safe deposit box, Lena said without blinking. It's safer that way. The third thing was my cedar box, the one that held decades of postcards, ticket stubs, and birthday cards from people I loved and people I'd outlived. I found the box empty. The postcards were gone. I was decluttering, she said, as if removing pieces of my life was a favor. You'll thank me. I didn't thank her. I just looked at her long enough for her to start avoiding my eyes. By the end of the month, the guest room didn't feel like mine at all. No quilt, no earrings, no cedar box. Even my books, the ones I'd kept on my nightstand for years, had disappeared. When I asked about them, Lena said they were in a tote somewhere in the garage. It was the same tone she'd use if she were talking to a child about a toy they'd outgrown. That night, I sat in bed staring at the blank wall and thought about my old house. The one Frank and I had bought when Lena was 5. The yellow door, the rosemary bush by the steps, the way the morning light came in through the kitchen window and landed right on the bread box. That bread box was still on my counter when I left. Ruth called me 2 weeks after the move. I don't want to upset you, she began, the kind of thing people only say before they upset you. What is it? I asked. There's a for sale sign in your yard. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean for sale? They've been showing the place, Ruth said. I saw 3 different couples walk through just this week. Realtors with clipboards. Strangers looking in your cabinets. I didn't say a word. I just asked her to take pictures of everything and send them to me. When the text came through later, I sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through each image. My yellow door. My kitchen. My quilt chest, empty. My bread box, gone. I didn't confront Lena. Not yet. People like her, they want the scene. They want the argument. I wasn't going to give her that. Instead, I pulled an old spiral notebook from my purse and opened it to the first blank page. I wrote, bank account, joint authorization without consent. Quilt, in storage. Pearl earrings, safe deposit box. Cedar box plus contents, decluttered. Books, in tote garage. House, listed for sale without consent. And then I left 3 empty lines beneath it. Because I knew there would be more. A few nights later, I overheard Lena and Mark in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but they weren't exactly whispering. The realtor says it'll go fast, Mark said. We could be closed in 6 weeks. Lena laughed, low and pleased. Good. Once it's done, we can finally start on the remodel. What about her? He asked. She's fine here, Lena said. Honestly, it's easier to keep an eye on her without all that space. She'll thank us eventually. I closed my notebook and stared at the ceiling until morning. The next day I called Ruth back. I'm going to need you to do something for me, I said. Find out the name of the realtor. And if you can, the title company too. What are you going to do? She asked. I didn't answer. Some things you don't say out loud until the paper's signed. That night at dinner, Lena was all smiles. Mama, Mark and I have been talking. Once the house sells, you won't have to worry about property taxes anymore. Or maintenance. I cut her off with a small nod. Sounds like you've got it all figured out. She relaxed, thinking I'd given in. But really, I was just adding another line to my notebook. They believe I'm done fighting. The next morning, while Lena and Mark were out, I sat at the little desk in the guest room and opened my spiral notebook again. This time I wasn't just making a list, I was building a case. On the first page I added dates to each item. I wrote down exactly when I noticed it missing, exactly what Lena had said and how she'd said it. On the second page I listed everyone who could confirm I was fine before the move. Ruth, my doctor, the ladies from church. On the third I made a column labeled Documents, and wrote, bank statements, property deed, tax receipts, insurance policies. I left space after each entry because I intended to fill it with proof. That Friday I called Ruth again. Did you get the realtor's name? I asked. Linda Sawyer, she said. From Clearview Realty. I see her car there almost every day. I wrote it down. And the title company? Clearview Title, she said. Same owner. I thanked her and told her to hold on to every picture she'd taken. You're not gonna do anything rash, are you? She asked. No, I said, nothing rash. Just thorough. The following Monday I called the bus service. The driver remembered me from years back. Mrs. Carter, I thought you moved, he said. I did, I told him. But I need a ride downtown tomorrow morning. Early. I didn't tell Lena. I just told her I was going for a walk. The bus dropped me 2 blocks from Harland and Finch, attorneys at law. The receptionist looked up as I stepped inside. Do you have an appointment? She asked. I do now, I said and wrote my name on the sign-in sheet. Mr. Harland came out a few minutes later, the same calm face I remembered from when he helped me settle that property dispute years ago. We sat in his office and I told him everything. The joint bank account, the missing belongings, the for sale sign, the overheard conversations. He didn't interrupt. He didn't take his eyes off me. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Carter, he said, do you still have your will? Yes, I said, but we're going to change it. He pulled a legal pad toward him. Here's what we're going to do. First, we'll get a capacity evaluation from a doctor the court trusts. Then we'll demand the bank's signature cards and branch footage from the day your account was changed. We'll contact the title company and realtor to freeze any sale until ownership is verified. And we'll revoke any power of attorney they may have filed. I nodded. And after that? He smiled slightly. After that, we'll see how much they like playing defense. The next morning, I met Dr. Albright, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who asked me questions about the date, the season, the last meal I'd eaten, and the names of my neighbors. She had me draw a clock and recall 3 words: apple, key, paper. 10 minutes later. When she asked why I was there, I didn't hesitate. Because someone thinks age is permission, I said. And I'd like the court to know it isn't. She signed her report on the spot. That afternoon, Mr. Harland and I went to the bank. The branch manager started talking about policy and security measures. Mr. Harland started talking about subpoenas. Within 20 minutes, we had still photographs of Lena sitting at the bank desk, signing my name with her left hand. I'm right-handed. Interesting, I said and slipped the copies into my notebook. By Wednesday, letters had gone out to the realtor, the title company, the bank, and to Lena herself. None of them were loud. All of them were final. That night at dinner, Lena poked at her food. You went behind my back, she said. No, I said. I came out from behind yours. By Friday, the air in the house had shifted. Lena was quieter, sharper around the edges. Mark kept his head down, glancing at me like I was an unexploded shell in the corner. I kept my routines the same. Tea in the morning, walks in the afternoon, the news at 6. But now, every time the phone rang, Lena snatched it up before the second ring. Sometimes she'd go into the backyard to talk. Sometimes she just let it go to voicemail and sat there tapping her fingers against the table. She was waiting for something. I already knew what it was. On Monday, Harland called. The title company has frozen the listing, he said. They've also confirmed the property is in your name alone. No transfer, no sale without your signature. I smiled into the phone. And the bank? Your account has been restored, he said. Full access, including the withdrawals made in the past 3 weeks. We'll be filing a claim for restitution. That night, Lena came into the guest room without knocking. You're making a mess of things, she said. Only the things that don't belong to you, I said. She crossed her arms. I was trying to protect you. From what? I asked. From independence. From my own house. Her lips tightened, but she didn't answer. She turned and walked out, shutting the door harder than she needed to. 2 days later, I got a call from Ruth. You'll never guess who just drove up to your house, she said. The moving company. They're unloading your dining set. It was the first of many deliveries. Over the next week, boxes began arriving at Lena's door, each one marked with my name and my address. My address, not hers. The court order had been clear. All property removed without consent was to be returned immediately. Lena stacked the boxes in the garage, pretending they weren't there. Mark avoided the garage entirely. I just made notes in my spiral, checking off each item as it came back. The court date came faster than I expected. Harland met me at the courthouse steps with a folder in his hand. Today is just the emergency hearing, he said. We're asking for immediate revocation of any legal authority she's claimed over you, plus a formal warning against further interference. Inside, Lena sat at the opposite table. She didn't look at me, not once. Mark sat behind her, staring at the floor. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood. Your Honor, I said, I raised my daughter to believe that love meant protecting what was precious. I didn't think I'd have to protect myself from her. But here we are. Harland placed the photographs on the judge's desk. Lena's left-handed signature, the bank forms, the listing agreement with my forged initials. The judge didn't take long. All authority revoked. Property sale frozen. Any further action without consent will be considered criminal. Outside the courthouse, Harland turned to me. What now? I thought about it. Now, I said, we take back my house. The next step would be slow, methodical, and impossible for her to stop, the same way it played out in the nursing home story you love. 3 days after the hearing, the eviction notice was served. It was delivered at 7 in the morning by a man in a navy jacket who didn't waste words. He handed the envelope to Lena at the front door, tipped his cap to me in the kitchen, and left without looking back. Lena stood frozen for a moment, reading the first few lines. Then she slammed the door and stormed into the guest room where I was sipping my tea. "You're kicking me out of my own home?" she spat. "It's not your home," I said calmly, setting my cup down. "It never was." Mark came in from the hallway, rubbing his face like he'd been dragged into a nightmare. "Where are we supposed to go?" he asked. "That," I said, "is a question I asked myself the night you told me to make peace with losing my house. I figured it out. So will you." Over the next 2 weeks, they moved like people living on borrowed time. The boxes they'd packed for my things now swallowed up their own furniture. Their voices in the kitchen were clipped, sharp. I could hear them whispering late at night, doors closing harder than they should. Tyler, my grandson, showed up on the 4th day with his backpack slung over one shoulder. He lingered by the guest room door. "Can I stay here for a while?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "As long as you need." On the 9th day, I walked through the house, room by room, making notes in my spiral about repairs I'd do once I moved back in. The scuff marks on the hallway walls. The broken curtain rod in the dining room. The spot on the carpet where something had clearly spilled and never been cleaned. Lena saw me and couldn't help herself. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said. "This isn't about winning," I said. "It's about returning things to where they belong." On the morning of the 14th day, the moving truck came. I didn't stand outside to watch, but I could see from the front window as Mark loaded boxes into the back, his face tight and pale. Lena carried smaller loads, a lamp, a jewelry box, framed photos, and refused to look toward the house. Tyler stayed inside with me, playing cards at the kitchen table. "Are you going to move back in right away?" he asked. "Not right away," I said. "I've got another plan first." That afternoon, after they drove off, Harland handed me a stack of keys. "Your house is officially yours again," he said. "What do you want to do with it?" I smiled. "Sell it." The process was quick, almost too quick. The same week the for sale sign went up. A young couple came to see it. They walked through every room with the kind of reverence I'd once had, running their hands along the walls, picturing where their lives would fit. "We'd like to make an offer," the wife said, her voice bright with excitement. I accepted without hesitation. And with the money, I bought the house right next door to the one Lena and Mark had just moved into. The day I moved in, I wore my best blue dress and sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea, just like Dolores did in the story you love. When Lena came out to water her plants and saw me, she froze mid-step. I raised my glass. "Afternoon," I said. She turned without a word and went back inside. The first week next door, I didn't speak to Lena at all. I watered the roses. I wiped the porch rail. I learned the exact time her blinds opened in the morning and how quickly they snapped shut when she realized who lived across the fence. On the second day, Mark came out to take the trash. He looked at me, looked at the street, looked at the bag in his hand like it might offer advice. He didn't wave. "Morning," I said, not moving from my chair. He nodded and went back inside. Tyler showed up that afternoon with a grocery sack and a question he tried to hide behind his bangs. "Do you have cards?" he asked. "I do," I said, and dealt us a hand at the little table by the window. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He ate 2 pieces of cornbread and asked if he could sleep on the couch, just for tonight. "Make the couch a habit and it becomes a room," I told him and showed him the guest room. He slept like a boy who hadn't heard silence in months. On the 4th day, Lena stepped onto her porch right as the mailman reached our block. She saw me talking to him, laughing about the weather, and turned on her heel. The mailman tipped his cap to me and said, "Lovely morning, Mrs. Carter." "It is," I said. "It's even lovelier when you call a thing what it is." That evening, I baked a banana bread and took it to the young couple who bought my old house. She opened the door with flour on her cheek. "We were just arguing about wall colors," she said, smiling. "Pick the one you can live with at night," I told her. "Daylight lies. Lamps don't." They laughed. We stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes talking about cabinets and creaky stairs. When I left, I could feel Lena's curtains twitch. By the end of the second week, I had planted roses along my fence line. Not red. ill. They catch the sunlight and hold it. I pruned in the mornings when the air was soft, then sat with sweet tea and a book I'd read a dozen times. I didn't look toward Lena's porch. I didn't need to. You can feel resentment the way you feel rain 2 minutes before it starts. On Sunday, Tyler stood in my kitchen doorway with that backpack again. Mom says I should be home more, he said, eyes on the floor. Do you agree? He shrugged. Home's loud. Then you can do homework here, I said. Loud doesn't own you. He exhaled. Thanks, Grandma. He came every day after that. He learned my pantry like a map. He learned the sound of my kettle and the way the house settled after 9. He learned that peace has a volume. A week later, Lena crossed the grass and stood at the bottom step of my porch with her hands in her pockets. Why are you doing this? She asked. Doing what? Living here. Sitting out here every morning. I bought this house because I like the view, I said, and let the words land where they needed to. You're trying to humiliate me, she said. No, I told her. That part already happened. You did that when you signed my name. She swallowed hard and looked at Tyler through the front window. You're turning him against me. I'm not turning anything, I said. I'm just not moving. She left without another word. The screen door clicked shut behind me. The roses kept on blooming. Days stretched into a rhythm. Tyler helped me weed the front bed and carried the heavy bags of soil without being asked. He told me about a science project and a coach who yelled too much and a friend whose parents never showed up on time. He didn't mention Lena. He didn't have to. On a Wednesday, I found a white envelope tucked under my mat. Inside was a note in Lena's handwriting, neat, careful, like the apology was auditioning. I didn't mean for things to go this far, it said. We can make this work. I placed the note in my spiral notebook and wrote underneath it, peace is not a group project. That Friday, Mark knocked on my door alone. Can we talk? He asked. We can stand, I said, staying on the porch. His smile was small and strained. There's no need to keep rubbing our noses in it. I'm watering my roses, I said. If your nose keeps finding the fence, that's between you and the yard. He pressed his lips together. We're trying to move on. Then move, I said. Forward is that way. He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked at the roses and thought better of it. 2 weeks later, the music started. Wine nights on Lena's porch, laughter just a touch too loud. It didn't bother me. People who are happy don't announce it every evening. Tyler came over during one of those nights, dropped his backpack by the door and stood with his hands on the counter like a child who'd remembered his own name. Can I stay here tonight? He asked. Bed's made, I said. We watched an old movie and ate peanut butter on crackers. He fell asleep halfway through. I turned off the lamp and sat in the quiet. It felt like finding a light switch in a familiar dark. In the morning, Lena knocked. Not gentle. Is Tyler here? She asked when I opened the door. He is, I said. He's asleep. He needs to be home. He needs to be rested, I said. You can pick him up after breakfast. She looked past me, trying to see the living room. You think you're teaching me a lesson. I think life already did, I said. I'm just not rewriting it for you. She left. She didn't slam the door this time. Improvement comes in small doses. A month passed. The laughter on her porch thinned. The music stopped. The curtains stayed drawn. I saw Mark leave with a duffel bag one Tuesday and not come back for 4 days. Tyler started talking more. He told me about the silence in their kitchen and the way the TV ran without anyone watching. He told me about the 3 times the Wi-Fi bill almost didn't get paid and the way Lena started counting out dollar bills on the counter like she could change their faces if she stared hard enough. Do you hate her? He asked quietly. I don't carry hate, I said. It's too heavy. I carry the lesson. What's the lesson? Guard your name, I said. Guard your peace. Don't sign either over. He nodded like that was an equation he could solve. In late spring, a small notice ran in the local paper about a new fund for older women dealing with family-led financial abuse. No names, no photos. Just a phone number and a sentence that said, "Help is given, not taken." I cut it out and pinned it to a cork board in my kitchen behind a recipe for peach cobbler. The first call came 2 days later. A woman named Jewel needed 3 months of back rent and a bus ticket out of a son's house where locks clicked on the outside. We sent the check. She left in the morning and slept in a room that didn't smell like permission. The next call was for a lawyer retainer. Then a change of locks. The fund moved quiet and steady, like water finding the lowest place and lifting it. Sometimes the phone would ring late and I'd let it go to voicemail. Tyler would glance up from his homework, waiting. "Another one?" he'd ask. "Another one," I'd say. "We'll call back in the morning." Lena knocked again in summer. She stood at the bottom of the steps the way people stand at the edge of a pool, testing the idea of getting in. "I heard about the grants," she said. "Word travels," I said. It's good what you're doing," she managed. "It is," I said. "It's what help looks like when it doesn't come with a lockbox." She blinked. "I was scared," she said, voice raw. "I thought if I controlled everything I wouldn't lose you." "You almost lost me because you tried to own me," I said. "Those are not the same." "Am I in your will?" "No," I said. "That isn't anger. It's planning." She nodded once as if the word itself weighed what it should. She left. I went back to my chair. The afternoon moved along without comment. School started. Tyler grew an inch and learned to make omelets without breaking the yolk. He started leaving notes on the counter when he went home after dinner. "See you tomorrow," they said. "Thanks for the quiet." In October, a certified letter arrived from Lena. It was short and plain and truer than anything she'd written in years. She had lost her job. The second mortgage was due. He was sorry. Not the kind of sorry that asks for a correction. The kind that sits beside the damage and finally names it. I put the letter in the safe next to my will. Not to save it. To give weight to the paper that mattered. The next month Mark moved out. A for sale sign leaned against their garage for 2 weeks and then disappeared. Some evenings I'd see Lena stand on her porch with a mug she didn't drink from, looking at the street like it might hand her a different script. I didn't wave. She didn't either. There are moments when acknowledgement turns into invitation. I wasn't hosting. Winter came soft that year. I learned how to keep the pipes warm and the porch salted. Tyler chopped wood like it was a language he'd been waiting to speak. We made soup on Sundays and played cards on Thursdays. We didn't mark the days so much as set them to a pace. In January, the community center invited me to speak at an elder rights seminar. "Just a few words," they said. "On paperwork. On boundaries." I stood at a podium that smelled like old polish and told a room full of women the only sentence that had saved me more times than I could count. "No is a complete plan." Afterward, a woman with a gray braid hugged me too tight and said, "Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy." "You're not," I said. "You're just not theirs." Spring again. The roses along my fence bloomed heavier than the year before. Tyler staked tomatoes without being asked. Ruth brought over a pie and sat with me, feet up on the step, the kind of comfort that doesn't need a topic. Across the way, Lena started parking on the street. She'd pull up, sit with the engine off for a minute, and then go inside. One afternoon, she stood on her porch with a manila folder in her hand, looked at my house, and then went back in. The folder didn't come out again. A month later, she knocked. Quiet this time. She stayed on the bottom step. "Mom," she said, and the word fell between us like something delicate and late. I wanted to say, "I understand why you did what you did." "I did it so I could sit here," I said, "and so I could help people sit where they belong." She looked at the roses. "Do you think we'll ever?" "We'll be neighbors," I said. "Neighbors are civil. Peace lives here. Don't knock unless you bring that with you." She nodded. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We didn't hug in the doorway. We didn't rewrite anything. We let the moment be exactly what it was. A line that would stay a line. The fund grew. Quiet money quietly placed. A lawyer in one county started volunteering his time after hearing what we were doing. A retired nurse began driving women to appointments and waiting in the lobby with a crossword. Tyler built a spreadsheet like it was a treehouse. Sturdy, simple, with a good view. He asked me one evening, "Do you ever wish you'd done it differently?" "No," I said. "I wish they had." He thought about that and nodded. Me too. In late summer, the young couple from my old house invited me to a barbecue. I brought a pie and a story about the first winter I lived there without Frank. Their little girl ran circles in the yard and asked me why my roses were the sun kind. I told her because they learned to hold the light. Walking home at dusk, I looked at my porch, my fence, my name on the mailbox, and felt the kind of relief that doesn't announce itself. It settles in your bones and unpacks. That night, I opened my spiral notebook. The first pages were the old lists: bank, quilt, earrings, cedar box, address, house. The middle pages were dates and calls and orders. The last page was mostly blank. I wrote, "They tried to sign my life for me. I signed my peace instead." I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer. The house was quiet in that good way. Tyler's shoes by the door. The smell of lemon oil from the table. The roses breathing in the dark. People imagine justice as a speech or a gavel or a headline. I think it's a chair that fits you and a view you chose and a fence you built yourself. I think it's the certainty that when someone comes for your name, they find a door that doesn't open. The next morning I sat on the porch with my tea. The street woke up slow. The mailman waved. Ruth watered her geraniums and shouted something about the church bake sale. Tyler jogged past on his way to school, touched the fence post twice, for luck, for ritual, and grinned. Across the way, Lena stepped out, saw me, and didn't flinch. She nodded once. I nodded back. It was not forgiveness. It was geometry. 2 points that would stay where they were drawn. I took a sip and set the cup down. The roses caught the light and kept it. Peace isn't something they hand you. It's something you reclaim inch by inch until the porch you're sitting on is yours again and the view doesn't ask permission to be beautiful.